my name is Olivier Krischer. I'm one of the co-curators of Wayfaring, 1970s, 80s photography in Taiwan. And I'm going to walk you into the exhibition space. This is the second in our series of online videos that will serve as a tour of the exhibition. So as we walk into the Central on China in the World Gallery, you're met by three works from seminal photographer Chang Chao-Tang. These three works represent the role that he really played. He's been a curator as well as a practitioner, a mentor to many of the younger generation of photographers whose works also featured in the exhibition. Taken in the early and mid-1960s, these actually date from when Chang was still a student. These mysterious images are some of the earliest in the show and of course predate the 1970s and yet signal the important shift that his work represents. The exhibition both begins and ends with his work, so there's a sense of a loop or a sort of cycle, and there are references between the sort of aesthetic experimentation of his Within and Without series and the performative work of the body in Kao Chung-Li's work, which features at the very innermost point of the exhibition. So there's a suggestion of beginning and ending. His work was inspired actually by absurdist literature and theatre though. It was very much a consciously avant-garde critique of what was really the stifling cultural conservatism of the martial law era. What's also interesting is that while the series does feature this sort of avant-gardist mode, for example with our series Ban Qiao is a now iconic image of a headless man taken low from the ground as he's sort of walking, his back turned and very sort of blurry and vague. On the one hand, this seems to be a sort of surreal image. On the other hand, each of the images in this series is titled after a specific place. And in this case, Ban Qiao is also Chang Chao-Tang's hometown. So there's a sense of the familiar and the unfamiliar wrapped together. Next to Chang Chao-Tang's work, we've placed Wang Hsin, which in some ways is quite a contrast. Wang Hsin is the leading pioneer of reportage photography in Taiwan. She really came to the fore in the 1970s. She came to photography at the age of 30 and she trained in Tokyo. One of a number of Taiwanese photographers and artists in the post-war period to seek study in Japan. The images in this exhibition are all from her well-known Farewell Orchid Island series, made in 1974, shortly after Orchid Island was open to tourism. And this is an island which is home to the indigenous Tao people. Wang has gone on to photograph Aboriginal communities across Taiwan over many decades, presenting contemporary cultures that are entangled with urbanism, modernity, and Christianity, as they are in this series. Her work signals issues of indigenous rights that were coming to the fore during this time of political transition, but also environmental activism. So for example, on Orchid Island, a nuclear waste facility was built in 1982 without prior consultation with the indigenous community, and that subsequently became the subject of a legal movement against the government. Wang has also been an important teacher, so she was one of the influential teachers for another photographer in the exhibition, Lien Hui-Ling, who we will discuss a little bit later on. But this signals the sorts of intergenerational connections between photographers in this exhibition. On the same wall, alongside Chang Chao-Tang and Wang Hsin's work, are two other photographers that point to the ways in which even standard salon-style portraiture or documentary photography also reflected the identity politics of the age. And so, for example, there are two portraits by senior photographer Chuang Ling. And one is of the itinerant musician, folk musician Chen. Another is of the self-taught painter Hou Tsung-Hui. While Yuan I-Jong's Man and Land series, again there's three works from that series, really sympathetically documented village life across Taiwan outside of the big cities, which until then had been sort of symbols of the rapid economic growth in Taiwan under the martial law era. These examples of Yuan's work show how even in a sort of classic documentary mode, there's still a searching for a sense of local identity, which is very much part of the nativist or Bantu sort of movement of the 1970s. Now we move on to the next section of the exhibition, which develops this theme of portraiture and identity politics.